Hello and welcome to Connect. I'm your host, Randy Shabilo. On today's show, we'll have Cameron Choquette, the CEO for Rental Housing Saskatchewan, as well as Twyla Redekop with the Mustard Seed. As always, we'd like to connect with you. Follow us on Facebook at ConnectYXE, catch past interviews on YouTube, email us at connectyxe@gmail.com, or leave a message at 306-665-3796. The Rental Housing Saskatchewan CEO, Cam Choquette, is with us today. I want to talk a little bit with Cameron about what's happened in the rental market this last little while and what we see of the future. Thanks for coming to the studio.
Yeah, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Let's talk about the rental housing market in Saskatoon, and I guess for that matter Saskatchewan in a broader picture. What does your organization do and how does it help landlords across the province?
Well, our organization represents over 1,000 members who collectively own, operate, and manage about 60,000 rental housing units across the province. People like you and I who maybe just have a basement suite or a duplex that we bought a few years ago or for our kids to go to university. And we also represent Western Canada's largest big rental housing providers that we all know and see across the city and across the province. The rental market's pretty tight right now, continuing the trend from 2023, where we had less than 2% vacancy across Saskatoon and Regina. That trend more or less continued in both cities. We got a bit of a reprieve in Regina, a bit more vacancy there, so supply kind of overbuilt demand for once in a while, whereas in Saskatoon, very similar vacancy rate at about 2%.
Does that take into consideration we've had a massive influx of immigrants recently, the pressure just on housing in general? So there's market rent, there's affordable rent. Anyone can belong to the organization that you represent then?
Absolutely. So membership is open to anyone who's an active rental housing provider in the province. There are no limits in terms of how big or small you are. 1 unit or 5,000 units, you're welcome to join. Saskatchewan's grown at a rate that we haven't seen in a long time. Typically in the last couple of years, it's, up to 30,000 people a year are moving to Saskatchewan and calling the province home. That's a lot of new housing required each and every year. For example, in Saskatoon alone in 2023, 14,000 people moved here. As we heard from city administration several times, that's like attaching the city of North Battleford onto the city of Saskatoon in a 12-month time frame. So rental housing developers and builders are actively building more rental housing across the city here in Saskatoon. That isn't keeping pace with the demand, which is why we're seeing vacancy still around 2%. To put it in perspective, when I joined 5.5 years ago, we had vacancy rates that were above 6%. So there was a lot more availability. You used to be able to walk down the street and get a rental unit for $50 cheaper because you had some buying power as a tenant because there was lots of units available. That's not the case anymore. We've seen waiting lists for rental housing for months on end. If you talk to affordable housing providers, the wait lists are hundreds of names long. And that's because we don't have enough supply to meet the demand in our growing province.
Does it come into play with some of the builders? We followed your organization and the leadership that you've had with regards to keeping councillors and administration informed about what people are feeling pressure with. Is there any silver lining in terms of where this can all go for someone wanting to invest, or what is it that people need to build more of what you are providing?
Well, we need the cost of capital to come down. So the interest rate cuts that we've been seeing over the past several months from the bank are helping because most projects, if not all of them, are financed through debt, through mortgages. So the cost of mortgages, the cost of capital has been a significant barrier over the last number of years. But we also see taxation, government levies, fees, and charges continue to be increased across the province, be it the City of Saskatoon downloading the land costs for the new schools in these new neighborhoods to the builder. That comes on the backs of new homeowners and new renters when those new homes and rental units go up, whereas that used to be covered by the provincial government through the taxes that we all pay, income and education taxes. So every time we add a cost in front of a developer, it comes back in the rental rate or in the purchase price of a home. So what we need is governments to supply good serviced land. We need an easy-to-use permitting system so that we can work with the municipality efficiently to build more housing. And we need them to get out of the way with unnecessary red tape and bureaucracy. And then we need the provincial government to make it easy to operate as a rental housing provider, making sure that the legislation isn't too onerous to navigate so that we can have an active and thriving rental housing industry.
And your organization is not the Office of the Rentalsman, so this is about rental housing in Saskatchewan.
Exactly. So the Office of Residential Tenancies, a separate administrative tribunal under the Ministry of Justice provincially, has an office in Saskatoon and Regina. That's where if I have a fight with one of my tenants over maybe a monetary issue, or maybe we're disagreeing on how our damage deposit is being split, how much I'm keeping and how much the tenant is getting back, both parties can go to what we call the ORT and file a claim against one another. It's like the small claims court for the rental housing industry, is the best way to describe it. And then an independent hearing officer adjudicates our claim and publishes a decision deciding the matter. And they also provide information for landlords and tenants throughout the year. They do some information events, but that's where our industry goes to get the final say on issues between landlords and tenants.
So your organization is voluntary membership, and it would include, I would imagine, someone who might have several apartment blocks and maybe traded on the TSE or something for that matter, larger corporations. What would you say to someone who's wanting to invest in Saskatoon? Would that be something that you could help them with if they were from Calgary, as an example, and wanted to build an apartment here? Would that be something they could shoulder tap you with? So
we have a number of connections inside, city administration and inside the development community. We'd happy to help anyone with a myriad of issues. We're also not afraid to say that we don't know, and we pass our members off to folks who do know in the industry. We are really about helping potential investors understand the operating environment they're in. So what kind of laws might be different from Calgary here in the city of Saskatoon on anything from smoke alarms to clearing your sidewalk to rental rate increases and what you can do here in the province. The Saskatoon Region Home Builders Association is very well suited to help potential builders build as well, because they have a really close connection with building standards and Saskatoon land here in the city. So between our two associations, we're really about supporting any rental housing developers and builders, hearing their issues, bringing them to council administration, and then we do a lot of member support for operators, people who actively have tenants in units. That's really our bread and butter, because we want to make sure that our members are well supported with training, education, best practices, all of those things.
I found it interesting. I think there's just a connotation that rent would mean affordable or low end or cheap. I don't know the proper adjective, but there are people that do want to rent, but with more amenities and upscale and more space. Do you see a 60-40 or 70-30 type of mix with that?
I would say there's a very important distinction to make between affordable rental units and kind of what we say market rent or market rate units. Affordable units are typically smaller in size. They typically don't have any or very few amenities in the building. And that's what we saw built in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, right? If you go down 7th Street in Saskatoon, there are 2- and 3-story walk-ups for what seems like 2 miles, right? They're typically brick, they have a central boiler, very affordable, very rudimentary rental units. That's because the government really was focusing on multi-unit residential developments back in the latter part of the 20th century. Whereas now we've seen a real shift to what we call purpose-built rentals. Units purposely built for a lifetime rental. They've got a clubhouse and a pool and a dog run and a dog wash and a home theater that tenants can book and access. So they have all of these amenities for the modern day renter. They are typically on the more expensive side of the spectrum, but they provide a great service for modern day renters, be it students who have a couple roommates and they want to share a 3-bedroom and it's got a garage underneath, or it's people like my parents who used to live on a farm outside of the city, and they want to live here 6 months a year in Saskatoon. They don't want to live in a 40-year-old rental that has a central boiler that they can't really control with a thermostat. They want to live in a shiny new 2-bedroom rental with a quartz countertop and a beautiful clubhouse that they can visit and go play pool with their friends. So the market's definitely shifting to providing a lot of different amenities for today's renters.
It's great to hear that it's not one size fits all. There is a myriad of choices. Do you see anything in the next 12 months that people can look for? Is there any hope that you see with the rental rates? You mentioned increases were fairly substantial past couple of years.
Yeah, for 2023 and 2024, we saw average rental rates increase about 8 or 9% year over year. That's getting pretty hard to stomach if you're a tenant in today's day and age. We want to see that stabilize over this next 12 and 24 months. What will help do that is units being completed and put on the market. That increased supply means increased competition, so there's more buying power for tenants.
Yep.
And we're also going to see hopefully some cost decreases in terms of interest rates at least. We're not going to see much relief on property taxes and insurance and those type of things. But increased competition is really what we're looking for. We want to see supply continue to grow in any city, town across the province. And hopefully that'll increase that vacancy rate, stabilize those rents, and bring the market back to a bit more stability. And that's kind of what we're hoping for.
And if people wanted to reach out to your office to get more information, what's the best way of doing that?
Well, we still pick up the phone. So 306-653-7149, or visit our website, rhsk.ca. We're happy to answer the phone, send us an email. We pride ourselves in making sure we can provide a response really quickly or connecting you with someone who does.
Kevin, thank you so much for your leadership on this file, and best of luck to you in the upcoming days.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
We'll be right back, folks.